12 foods at Costco are about to get significantly more expensive. Not 5%, not 10%. We're talking 20 to 50%, and most shoppers won't see it coming until it's already happened. But this isn't just a price story. Some of these products are quietly getting smaller. Some are being replaced by lower quality versions. And some of the best options are already disappearing, while the packaging looks exactly the same as it always did. Prices move first, packages shrink second, then the better options get quietly swapped out. By the time most people notice, the window has already closed. Today we're going through all 12, and the item at number 1 is the clearest example of a shift already happening across the entire food industry. Hiding in plain sight, let's get into it. 1. Almonds. Those large bags of almonds at Costco still look like one of the best deals in the store. Same packaging, same bulk size, same spot on the shelf. Nothing suggests anything has changed. But here's one number that permanently changes how you see almonds. Producing a single almond, not a handful, not a bag, one almond requires close to a gallon of water over the course of its development. That sounds almost impossible, but it explains something most shoppers never think about while standing in that aisle. Almonds aren't just a snack. They're a product of land, climate, and a reliable water supply. And right now, all three are under serious strain. California produces roughly 80% of the world's almond supply. When California runs into trouble, almond prices everywhere start to move. 2. Walnuts. Walnuts have a very different story, and it tends to catch people off guard. Most shoppers see them as just another nut. But there's a specific reason a large and growing number of people, particularly over 50, reach for them deliberately. Walnuts are one of the most concentrated plant-based sources of omega-3 fatty acids of any nut available. 1 oz a day delivers healthy fats, fiber, and minerals in a form that requires zero cooking, fits into almost any meal, and costs a fraction of what omega-3 supplements run at the pharmacy. That's what makes the large bags at Costco worth paying attention to. It's not just the lower cost per pound. 3. Pure vanilla extract. This is the one that surprises almost everyone. A small bottle, barely noticed in the baking aisle. Most people reach for it a few times a year and never give it a second thought. But pure vanilla extract sits on top of one of the most fragile supply chains in the entire food industry. The number that explains everything is this. Roughly 80% of the world's natural vanilla comes from Madagascar. Not a region, not a continent, one island. That level of concentration creates a vulnerability with almost no parallel in food production. Madagascar sits directly in the path of tropical storms and cyclones. A single damaging storm season can wipe out large sections of vanilla crops across the entire island. 4. Organic raw honey. Most people see honey as a simple sweetener, something for tea or toast. But honey has a characteristic almost nothing else on a grocery shelf shares. When stored correctly, real honey essentially never expires. No refrigeration, no spoilage window. A properly sealed jar can sit on a shelf for an extraordinary length of time and remain completely usable. 5. Whole bean coffee. For most households, coffee isn't optional. It's the first thing that happens in the morning, a routine most people protect without even thinking about it. But that routine is getting more expensive, and the pressure starts somewhere most people would never think to look. Coffee is one of the most climate-sensitive crops in global agriculture. Rain at the wrong time delays harvests. High humidity raises the risk of fungal disease. Sustained heat produces smaller beans and lower-grade output. Brazil is the world's largest coffee producer by a significant margin. When unusual weather hits Brazilian harvests, the entire global market responds. Not the next morning, but several months later, clearly and consistently on the price tag at the store. 6. Organic frozen fruit. Here's a way of thinking about frozen fruit that most people have genuinely never considered. When you pick up a bag of organic blueberries or raspberries from the Costco freezer aisle, you're not just looking at fruit, you're looking at electricity. The cost of frozen fruit isn't driven only by farming and harvesting. It's driven by a cold infrastructure that has to run continuously from the moment that fruit leaves the farm until it reaches your freezer at home. After harvest, it's rapidly cooled, moved into frozen storage, loaded onto refrigerated trucks, held in temperature-controlled distribution centers, and then placed into freezer cases at the store. 7. Unbleached flour. Most people assume flour will always be cheap, consistent, and easy to find. That assumption is starting to crack. And the way it's cracking is something most shoppers will never notice until it's already affected them directly. A large bag of unbleached flour at Costco doesn't look like something worth thinking carefully about. It doesn't carry the urgency of rising egg prices or olive oil climbing month after month. It just sits there, looking exactly like it always has. But something has shifted, and it starts long before the flour ever reaches the store shelf. Here's the detail most everyday shoppers never realize. Flour quality doesn't begin at the mill. It begins in the soil, when farmland is cultivated intensively over many years, without adequate recovery time. The wheat it produces becomes inconsistent in one very specific way: protein content. And for anyone who bakes regularly, protein is not a minor variable. Protein creates gluten. 8. Pure maple syrup. Pure maple syrup increases in price in a way that never causes alarm. It doesn't spike overnight. It climbs gradually, a few dollars per bottle, year after year, until one day you pick up a container and quietly wonder when it crossed into premium territory. That gradual movement is exactly what makes it easy to underestimate. The reason it moves this way is structural, and it's unlike almost any other food on this list. Maple syrup production simply cannot respond to demand. It depends entirely on trees, temperature cycles, and time, none of which can be accelerated, manufactured, or substituted. The majority of high-quality maple syrup comes from Canada, with Quebec accounting for a dominant share of global output. Maple trees produce sap only during a narrow seasonal window, one that requires a very specific temperature pattern. Once opened, it needs refrigeration. The bottle sitting on that shelf represents decades of tree growth, a narrow seasonal window, and weather conditions that simply cannot be manufactured on demand. When you see it that way, the price makes a lot more sense, and so does buying it now. 9. Basmati rice. Billions of people around the world depend on rice every single day. And right now, the issue isn't that rice is disappearing. The issue is that the path from the field to the shelf is becoming more expensive and less predictable. And most shoppers don't notice the signs until they're already paying more. At Costco, a large bag of Basmati still looks familiar. But pay closer attention across a few shopping trips, and the shifts become visible. Certain premium varieties showing up less consistently. Bag sizes quietly changing. Familiar brands getting replaced by others. The price per pound edging higher without any announcement or explanation. That's how change typically works in grocery stores. It rarely shows up as empty shelves. It shows up as fewer at slightly higher prices, gradual enough that most people don't connect the dots. Here's the part that surprises most people. The pressure on rice isn't coming from a shortage of the grain itself. It's coming from the cost of moving it. Rice is a heavy, low-margin product that travels enormous distances from where it's grown to where it's sold. When shipping routes are disrupted, fuel costs rise, or freight rates climb, rice prices can move quickly. Not because there's less rice in the world, but because of what it costs to transport that rice across those distances. There's also a quality signal worth paying attention to. Some wholesalers have flagged higher percentages of broken grains appearing in certain rice shipments. Most shoppers would never notice a few broken grains in a bag, but within the supply chain, it's a meaningful indicator. It signals that higher grade supplies are under pressure and that lower quality stock is being used more frequently to meet demand. What makes Basmati worth buying specifically is its long grain, distinct aroma, low stickiness, and broad versatility. It pairs well with almost anything: beans, vegetables, curries, soups, or simply seasoned on its own. For families managing a fixed food budget, it remains one of the most reliable tools for making every dollar stretch further. And the storage advantage is real. Transferred into airtight food-grade containers, and kept in a cool, dry place away from light, Basmati rice can last an extraordinarily long time, potentially decades under ideal conditions. 10. Wild-caught canned salmon. If you were designing a protein source for maximum practicality, wild-caught canned salmon would rank near the top. One can delivers more than 20 gallons of protein, along with omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, and calcium from the soft, edible bones. No refrigeration, no cooking from raw, a shelf life measured in years. By almost every measure of convenience and nutritional density, it's in a category of its own. But it's facing pressure from multiple directions, and that pressure is quietly reshaping how reliably it appears on shelves and at what price. Wild salmon cannot be produced on demand. It's governed by natural fish populations, seasonal harvest windows, and regulatory limits designed to protect long-term fishery health. When populations come in below projections or conservation guidelines tighten, catch limits adjust and supply adjusts with them. No retailer can change that. Processing adds another layer. Canned salmon isn't just fish. It represents metal cans, energy-intensive facilities, labor, refrigerated transportation, and warehousing at multiple points in the chain. When any of those costs rise, the retail price follows quickly. 11. Dry lentils. Of everything on this list, dry lentils may be the most underestimated purchase in the entire store. The packaging isn't designed to catch anyone's eye. They sit near the grains and rice, and most shoppers walk past without a second look. Nothing signals value, nothing signals urgency. That's exactly the point. When you measure protein per dollar spent, very few foods, shelf-stable or otherwise, compete seriously with dry lentils. A single pound produces a significant number of servings of soup, stew, or side dishes. At a time when meat, eggs, and packaged proteins are all moving higher, lentils represent quiet, consistent value that doesn't ask for any attention. 11. Dry lentils. Of everything on this list, dry lentils may be the most underestimated purchase in the entire store. The packaging isn't designed to catch anyone's eye. They sit near the grains and rice, and most shoppers walk past without a second look. Nothing signals value, nothing signals urgency. That's exactly the point. When you measure protein per dollar spent, very few foods, shelf-stable or otherwise, compete seriously with dry lentils. A single pound produces a significant number of servings of soup, stew, or side dishes. At a time when meat, eggs, and packaged proteins are all moving higher, lentils represent quiet, consistent value that doesn't ask for any attention. 12. Extra virgin olive oil. If one product captures what's happening across the modern food supply more honestly than anything else on this list, it's extra virgin olive oil. And here's why it's number one. This isn't just a pricing story, it's a quality story. And that's a much harder problem to see coming. The primary olive growing regions, Spain, Italy, Greece, have dealt with recurring droughts, prolonged heat events, and increasingly unpredictable weather for years. Every item covered today is something millions of people already buy on a regular basis. Almonds, flour, rice, honey, coffee, salmon, olive oil. Nothing exotic, nothing unusual. These are some of the most familiar products in any Costco.